Hi all.
Oh,
Hi,
good
thank
day.
you for good day. Hi, thank you for joining today's training. Okay, so I just want to make sure everybody can hear me clearly and that my screen can be shown and it's all clear on your side. You just put into the chat or you could just let me know.
That looks fine.
Great. Okay, so today's training is going to be based off of Palladium, the control panel, and basically the system configuration. So Palladium does use specific configuration, especially in the regional settings, to either produce its reports or to invoice our documents. Okay, so we're going to start off. We're just going to be logging in via the admin. Okay. Once Palladium is open and you're our administrator, you can then move on to the left-hand side on the control panel. So this is basically where the training is going to be taking place. And we're going to be going through most of the icons. We won't be going through some of them, such as the approver setup CRM activities, as well as maybe the report designer, since this is all different procedures in Palladium. Okay, so starting off, we're going to be on the setup of Palladium. Starting off on the left-hand side is the setup. On the setup, this is where you're able to change the company's contact details, as well as any type of date settings. So this will be all the company's information that you can then change. This also changes on your invoices and your reports. Then you would have your date settings. So your date settings is to change your current year, is to change your earliest transaction date and to give you information of your current year and of your current begin date and end date. The earliest transaction date, this is usually changed if you would like to prevent people from either going before March 1st, or you're able to proceed this to the beginning of the previous financial year, as seen here, March 2023. So this will allow me to transact or to process in the previous financial year. If not, you can then just close it off and say that before the 1st of February, they will not be able to process. So this will prevent everybody from processing before this transaction date. Then we have our delivery locations. So this is in case you have any deliveries that are going from one location to another, you can add these locations. You then also have your logo. So this is where you're able to add in the company logo and where that company logo is going to be appearing. Once you're finished with your company setup, you can just click on OK and close it. We then have our options, but our options I think we will go through at a later stage. Let's go through most of these ones here. So when it comes to the control panel, this is all the setup for your Palladium. So this comes from your linked accounts to your terms, your currencies, any exchange rates, form customization or form mapping, as well as any type of approval setups. This is also a place where you're able to change any of your users and to change any of the access rights for those users. This is where you also proceed with your year end, and also where you where you process any type of data integrity checks. Okay, so going forward on the company setup, the sales taxes and VAT, this is where you're able to add in specific tax codes. You would have your normal purchase control account and your sales control account. You then have your tax codes. This is where you're able to add, edit, or remove any of your tax codes. Be in mind that any tax codes or linked accounts or any type of terms that have already been used in a previous document will not be able to be removed. This is because it's linked to that document, so there's no way that Palladium will allow you to remove it, more so make it inactive than anything else. But when it comes to the tax codes itself, this won't be possible. You'll either keep the tax code or create a new one and change the tax code under your customers or vendors. You then have your linked accounts. So within each of the modules, you'll see that under your general ledger, payables, receivables, and so on, this is where all your linked accounts appear. You also have your workshop module. So under Palladium Premium, your workshop module is a new module, is a separate module in Premium, and you'll have to create a separate workshop or work in progress account to be allowed to use that module. Same goes in the inventory and services, such as goods in transit, if you'd like to use any type of, excuse me, branch transfers, as well as manufacturing, that there's also a work in progress manufacturing account. So this is where you're able to change any of those linked accounts. You then have your terms, and simply just your terms, your 30 days from invoice, end of the following month, or we could create a new one that is based off of cash on delivery. You could say whether this is for the accounts receivable or payables, and you can then proceed with adding in any of the additional information for your term. You can then click on OK and proceed as normal. We then have our currencies. So this is where you're able to add in separate or foreign currencies onto your Palladium. This will show you your home or basic currency. This will not be able to, you're not able to change this home currency unless basically you create an entire new database. And then you would have your foreign currencies. So the ones that you were dealing with based on customers or vendors. Then we have our exchange rates. Our exchange rates go with our currencies. This is where you're able to add in our specific exchange rates, so the United States dollars. We can then add a new exchange rate. And if you have Palladium server attached onto your local server, you can then have your auto updater. So this will basically pull through from a specific website on our side, just to pull through the current United States exchange rate from your home currency to this currency. Okay, but that would be set up on a separate occasion. If you'd like to add in a new exchange rate, so you can see the date. So after that date, this exchange rate then falls. You can then change the date for a later option. Have the exchange rate at the minimum and maximum. Click on OK, and you'll then start receiving the next exchange rate from here. So this will be your default rate over here. This will be your minimum accepted rate. So this is with your documents being able to be processed with a minimum rate, or your max rate. So your exchange rate cannot go over this limit. Okay, after you've done with your exchange rates, you can click on the X. Next, we have our number and date formats. In the beginning, I said that Palladium does have specific configuration settings. This is where that's set up. So this under your date, number, and date formats. It'll open up your regional settings for your windows, and then you can move on to the additional settings on the bottom. On my side, you can see that under the decimal symbol, it is a dot. Then we have a space as for digital grouping, and then the list separator, which is a comma. This is default and also mandatory when it comes to Palladium. In Palladium, you will get several different errors. It could range from saying that Palladium is unable to process an invoice due to a 0 or due to a decimal. You'll receive an error similar to that. This is because Palladium uses these designated regional settings. Under currency, you'll have the same option. You'll have your currency symbol, your decimal symbol, which would be a comma. In my case, it would be a comma, and then your digital grouping symbol, which would be a space. After you've added in all those details, you can click on Apply, OK. Apply would be highlighted here, and then click on OK. After that, you will have to restart Palladium. Palladium will have to be restarted to make sure that it does configure to those settings, and then your errors or issues should be sorted out from there. This does depend on the error as well. The next icon is the form setup. So under the form setup, this is where you're able to map any of your forms. So any customized forms or any specific forms such as your invoices or purchase invoices can be added to either the machine or to the global cache. So local means that it is specific to the machine you're currently logged into, not necessarily the user, but the actual machine itself. Under global, this is where it will be mapped for all users. So if I click on global and click on OK, and I go to my invoices, for example, you'll see here that I have two separate invoices. In my invoices, I've mapped them to my customized invoice template. And you'll see under my C drive that these are all the forms I have. Okay. Again, whenever form setup is made under the global option, this will be set for all users as well as all machines. So basically on another machine, if you had to log into a separate device or another machine, as long as your Palladium, as long as your C drive contains this forms, Palladium will be able to track it on that machine and pull through the same invoice. So this just means that you can, from one machine, copy all your forms, paste it in the other machine, and you'll be able to get the same result. Okay. After you've added in all your forms or you've mapped all your forms, you can just click on save and save. You'll see if I go back into the form setup and I go into local cache, invoices, it is separated. So you can see I'm using a completely different invoice here. This local will take priority over your global forms. So even though it's mapped here, this will take priority over your global cache. But if I have to remove this, for example, it will then take over from the default. Since there is no forms here, this local cache will not take priority. Click on save, and then you can carry on moving forward. You then have your custom reports. This is for Palladium's use. And if there is any type of custom reports on your side that you do have or that you have had customized before recently, you can then add them here. For example, I have a specific report for one of the clients, and we'll just call it a manufacturing report. It'll be set for manufacturing. And the location would be the location I'm taking the report from. So if I close my custom reports and I go to my manufacturing module, under manufacturing reports, you'll see I have my manufacturing report here. This would be that custom one that was made on our side. Next, we have our POS Pole Displays. This will just display a COM port or a specific port or line from here to your actual point of sale display. This is set up completely differently or completely separately. It does depend on what your customer or what your business requires. So this will just display any of your POS systems live. We then have our budgets and targets. So this is the budgets and targets that would be for the company itself. You can then select a budget or target. So for either the departments, customers, salespersons, inventory and services, and or general ledger. You can then add in general ledger, on each of the accounts for their budgets. This will then proceed throughout the year. You could type in a total of, sorry, apologies on that. Let's just get the budget detail quickly. Oh, Okay, apologies on that. The budgets and targets is used to update your accounts. They seem to have swapped it from the previous version. Apologies on that. But your budgets and targets, if selected under the customers, for example, you'll see all your customers' budgets and targets. If in any case you need to increase or decrease them by a certain percentage, you can then do so here. If I click on decrease, it will then decrease all the amounts or budgets that is either on your customers, vendors, general ledger, and or inventory and services. So if we come into the accounts receivable, we'll come into our customers, TST001, and we'll have our targets here on the right-hand side. We click on set sales targets for the customer, and we'll set it to 5,000. We'll then allocate this to the specific periods and click on OK. Now you'll see if we go back to the control panel, budgets and targets, we'll select our customers, and there you can see our total and all of our dates in between. We then increase it by 20%, distribute, sorry, apologies. Then you calculate and distribute the amounts. Now you can see here that it's all been increased by 20%, and then we can save the document. After it's been saved, we'll go to the accounts receivable, customers, we'll go back into our test 001, we'll go to our targets, and our targets have then been updated. So this is just a much quicker way than going to each of the customer one by one, and then allocating new targets and adding in new budgets and targets to each of the customers. Okay, moving on, we then have our document status types. This is mainly for the CRM, so we won't be going through this option. When we have training done for the CRM, we'll be going through this. Then we have our reason codes. Our reason codes is basically for debiting any type of document. So you can see here that there's a credit for credit notes on invoices. So if an invoice is then credited, it will need a reason code first before it can actually be processed. So yeah, we'll click on new and just say wrong order. We also have authorization. So if there is any reason codes to proceed with authorization, you can do so. Cancellations, which would basically be for your debit notes on your purchaser side. Repackaging or requisition. Repackaging would be to transfer, and requisitions would then be for your eternal requisition. So if we come here into the inventory side, you'll see the requisitions here. If these need to be canceled, there'll be a reason code for it. Moving forward, we have our country display names. So this is just going to be displaying the code of our customer, the country, and the name of that customer. We then have our tender types. Our tender types, you can see, is just the on account, cash, check, and going on. These accounts can then be changed via the actual account number itself that's being used, or by creating a brand new account if need be. You can remove the accounts, but unfortunately, you'll see here that cannot remove tender type while it is signed to a POS draw. So if your assignment or if your tender types are being used at a different place or a different section of Palladium, there's no possible way that they can be removed. Next, we have our job titles. So for our job titles, this is going to be mainly for our customers or set vendors. So let's say, for example, we need a manager, and then we need a consultant. We'll click on OK. And if we come to our accounts receivable, under our customers, you'll see under contacts, new, and you'll be able to select a name, and then the job title that they have, whether it's a manager or consultant. You can obviously create them from here if need be, but that would be the original place to create your job, the job titles. Next, we have the approver setup. The approver setup is a completely different module. This would be used in case of for any type of purchase invoices and or requisitions or payments. So if we have our approvers set up under the options side, you can come into the inventory and you'll have new icons that's been shown, either the approver documents here under requisition and all the approved documents under the requisition and quotations. Then we will move on and we will be skipping the CRM activity. Again, this is a different module. CRM is usually to keep track of all clients and procedures that's going on throughout the day, or to also give you a bit of a reminder. CRM activities can be used under your workspace to show your CRM activities, whether anything is overdue, if there's any due dates, current, and or in progress. From there, we also have our report designer. Our report designer is a bit different. This is Palladium's custom report designer. So if there's any type of reports that you need designed that won't be done by Palladium, you can try and use this option to see if the form does come up. So you can change any type of details. So we'll just go to that little folder icon. We'll select on a template. And you'll see that this is that the form designer looks like. You would then add in any new additional fields if need be, and to change anything if need be. We then have our password policy. So this is just stating the type of password that we need created whenever we have users created for them. And then we have our quick codes. Our quick codes is just a quick code with a description. There's not much to it. It's more information purpose than anything else. Great. From there, that would be our company setup. We can now move on to the options itself. So all the way on the left-hand side, we can double click on options, and I'll just quickly briefly go through what each of these mean. So starting off all the way from the right-hand side, you'll see that we're currently on the tab company. Again, company is to change or to manipulate some of the information and or the procedures we take. Such as on the left-hand side, we have our journal entries and to allow journal entries into linked accounts. Generally, Palladium does not allow any type of processing into the linked accounts manually. But in this case, if you'd like to process them either in a general ledger or on the invoice or on the customer or vendor invoice itself, you can then change that journal entry option to say, allow journal entries into linked accounts. Again, Palladium is quite a bit to go through, especially on the control panel. So I would suggest taking some time just to go through all the options that Palladium does offer, and then to figure out what it can and can't do for your company. Well, such as the CRM notification, we have CRM notifications if need be. We then have our naming convention. So this just means that we could change the name of certain places in the company. So such as customer, we can change this to client. If we click on OK, come into accounts receivable, you can see that the customer's name has now changed to clients. So that's more of a naming convention, just changing the alias of some of the names within Palladium. Okay. This will go through any of the options that you see here. You then have your optional delivery. So optional delivery just means that there is a delivery driver and whether those details need to be filled in or not. Again, this would be on the workshop module to see if there is any type of delivery drivers going in or out. You can then add in these fields. These fields are very similar to the ones on the sales invoice and all the customers. So you'll see here under optional document lines. Sorry, not there. You'll see optional AR and AP. This is where you're able to change the name of those fields and if they're mandatory or not. If I close this and I go into the accounts payable, so you'll see here under sales invoice, we have our document options, and then you'll see all the field names. You can then change these field names or add them under the control panel. You can see some of the names have actually been changed, saying ship via, courier, terminal, warehouse, method, and member number. So again, it all does depend on the situation or on the company itself. Going back into Palladium options, we then have our optional doc lines. So this is just stating what on your invoices, what items go where. So let's, for example, if you are working for a building company and you are now customizing a kitchen in a house, you need to make sure that, that you're customizing a house itself. You need to make sure that all your equipment and everything goes to the correct room. So that under the invoice, you're able to create these optional doc lines. You can then allocate specific items to those doc lines, stating that this item belongs to maybe, let's say, the bedroom and the other one is the lounge. How I can show this to you is that if we go into the general ledger, so the accounts receivable, we'll go to a quick invoice. You'll see here that on my lines for the accounts receivable side, I'm asking for the date of each of the items. In this case, I'm asking for the expiry date. I could have created a lot number, but in this case, I'm only using the actual item itself. If I click on lines, it will then say week of delivery, and I'm able to change that date. See on the document lines, receivables, week of delivery, and you can see that the type is a date, so it allowed me to select a certain date in that field. Then we have optional. This would be for your invoices and purchase invoices. Your auto notes. So under each of the invoices, there's usually a Palladium document that's either set to default or has been customized. In either of those documents, there could be an option where there is basically auto sales notes. So all these notes automatically appear upon invoicing. So if I close this and I go into your accounts receivable, and I go to sales invoices, document notes, auto sales notes. So then you'll be able to change it there under the control panel. And in that case, you'll prevent any type of issues or creating any type of additional information on the document notes. All of this does appear on the invoice itself as the only on the default invoice. If your form has been customized to have something different, it might not appear. Okay, going back into the options, we can briefly go through the rest of the topics. So going through, we have our projects. Again, this is just to make sure that you automatically prompt the user on entry for the products. Then we have our profit centers. So under our profit centers, you can automatically prompt user on entry for journal entries, receipts, purchases, sales, and so forth. Going forward, we have our email. This is to send emails via Outlook, or if you have an SMTP server, you can do so as well. Then we have our POS barcodes. So this is to allow to use embedded barcodes on our point of sale system. So any barcodes that has a list or a start position of 0 to, let's say, 1, 2, or 3, then those barcodes are allowed to be printed. We then have our POS system. So this is where you're able to actually upload or to tick the box to make sure that the Excel version is installing. Sorry, apologies on that. Sorry, that the POS has been installed and is working on your system. You'll see that there's enable point of sale. This will then, if I untick this and click on OK, you'll see that my point of sale is basically completely blank. You'll have to go into the control panel just to allow the point of sale. Under the point of sale, you can then go through any of the settings that might be changed for the point of sale. This could be the client processing, whether it's a cash sales mixed client or a mixed mode. Sorry, a client's account or mixed mode. We then have our SMSs. So this is just using your SMS provider. We do provide your SMSs as long as there's credits purchased and whatnot to send out SMSs. We then have our deposit slips. So under the deposit slips, this is just to add in specific deposit slips and how much money was guaranteed. So, under your, sorry, not guaranteed, your deposit slips for your POS system, or let's say your bank manager, you can then remove this. Let's say you work with a different currency and you don't necessarily have 100 or 200 notes. You would have 150 notes, 300 notes, or even 1,000 currency notes. You can add those here. Once you've added in any of your deposit slips denomination, you can then click on OK and it will accept it from there. You then have your manufacturing. So this is to activate a scale import. So if you have any scale imports, you can activate that here. Your general, blank authorization with reason codes, and your close validation method. So these are all options that the manufacturing side does have. Going through them would be beneficial if you do use this module. You then have your warehouse option. So in the warehouse, you can activate certain effects, such as auto print pick tickets, auto issue pick tickets, auto assign serial lots or lot pick tickets, and display recommended serial/lot numbers on a pick ticket. I currently have multiple bins ticked, and I do have multiple bins created. Unfortunately, if there's any type of inventory in those multiple bins or in the bins that is not default, then this option will not be able to be ticked. This is because that the other bins are still set as active. Then we have our pick ticket by location. This is activating a pick ticket, splitting the per location, only available for local print caching. We then have our inventory and services. So this is to change any of your item settings or inventory settings, such as the last received cost, or if the item uses a new import cost, if there is a round prices to, and so forth. You also have your display option to display any images. If you have any images on your actual item itself, you can add them here. You can then add the item description builder. So this would be basically the starting point of your items. So the label name, and if you have automatic building whenever you create an item and you don't want to be continuously making a unique code, this will then do it for you. We then have our web store attributes. So if you are running a web store, this is where your web store attributes for your items is going to be done. We then have our receivables and workshop. Again, this is just a bunch of major settings for Palladium. It is still best to just go through it and to make sure that you know where to find something, such as having it on settings 2. You can allow unique control accounts per customer. So if there's any customers that need to have their account changed due to specific reasons, they can have unique control accounts. You can also activate a password protection when emailing client documents. There's the default number of days required and any of the other settings that are here. Again, it is still best just to go through the control panel because there is quite a bit of different options that can change Palladium. We can then move on to our payables. Our payables is for our GRVs and basically has similar options than the receivables. On the payables side, there's nothing more besides setting up your product approvals. And on settings 2, it is just a small amount of options. Still activate password protection when emailing documents and so forth. We then have our GRV. So our GRV is to allow back orders. So if you process one order at a time, one part of the order at a time, and then you have your blind received in GRV. This just means that if a GRV is converted, it will then receive it as an open quantity. It will not set it back to 0. And then we also have our allow over receiving. So this just means that if the GRV is supposed to be more than the actual purchase in a purchase order, you can do so as well. Then at the bottom is our core processing item cost per method. So whether we use the GRV cost, which uses the full conversion, or we use the vendor cost, which uses the GRV, the GRV as partially closed. So you're able to close it partially. And then your general option, this is just allowing access to your cash book in separate modules, require the use of a cash book, use cash book disabled, and then you have your receipt and payment journals. So the default update method would just be the update the bank in detail, or update the bank in summary. Okay, ESA roster is just to update employee from roster. So saying that the server name, database, and username password can be tested, and then this company itself will then be changed. For example, my current server is the 129.223.223, and 226. These options here, or these procedure numbers, can be changed right now, and then you'll be able to test the connection and change it from there. But we're not going to be doing that since we already have our connection established. Great. That would be on the company setup side itself. Again, it is much better just to go through Palladium just to get a bit more understanding to see where things come and go from. Next up, we have our company administration. So under the company administration, we have specific procedures, such as viewing all the users in the control panel. So viewing all the users that is logged into Palladium. We then have exclusive mode, which will put our system into exclusive mode and other users will not be able to log into the system. This is usually done only when there is a year-end process. We then have our finishing entering history, which is again a year-end process. We then have our close period. Our close period will basically close off the year to begin the new one. and our finish entering period, which will basically say that all our documents or purchase orders is being cleared for now until a later use. We then have our archive data. You set an earliest transaction date. And then you'll be able to archive all the documents for them. This is just to make sure that it's more like, say, a backup or reducing the size of your customers and vendors' documents. A lot of the time that you might have a couple thousand or 2,000 documents, you can then archive the company data via customers, clients, vendors, and inventory, and then you'll be gaining more space from there. Then we have our clear data. Clearing data, you'll have to be set to exclusive mode, and then you'll double click on clear data. Let's just check if we can go into exclusive mode now. Okay, looks like there's still somebody logged into the company. You'll see if you try access exclusive mode, there's something like this might pop out. This is due to the fact that somebody else is also logged into the same company. Okay, but the clearing data option will allow you to clear all data except as of this year. So it will clear all the data, keep all the opening and closing balances, but will not allow you to remove anything of the current year. Next, we have our system administrator. So that was our company administrator. Next is our system administrator. This is where you're able to change the password. This is where you're able to change the password of your actual user or my user. And then we actually have our users itself. So here's all the admins or administrators that I've set. We can then create a new user with a new name, full name, and details with specific access rights. So you can see that almost all icons will have its own access right for the item. Once you've created your user, you can just click on OK, and they'll appear here. Again, just to keep in mind that your users will change passwords upon the first login. After that, there'll be no need to change the password. Great. And last but not least, we have our import and export. Our import and export basically states that all of these options that you see here, or the master files of a company, can be exported and or imported into a new company. For example, such as our GL accounts, we could get data and state, okay, that these are all the accounts I'm currently using. I can then export this data into Excel and then import it into another machine. This is obviously a much quicker way because you can then change any type of vendors, customers, items, any account details if need be. So you can see it updated all of my accounts. And we can click on close. Okay, this procedure would go on for all of these. If you would like a specific template based off of these imports, you can come here into the help option and you'll see form templates. After you click on form templates, you can then look for a specific, sorry, not form templates, apologies, that it would then be the import templates. You'll see here under the import templates, there'll be a list of all the templates for the user. For example, the vendors, it will give you all the examples and how to use them. Okay, great. That would mainly be the control panel. If you have any questions, please feel free to ask or unmute your mic if need be. Your linked accounts can be changed after the initial setup. It does depend though. Such as my accounts receivable. Sorry, Dave. Under the accounts receivable, if there is any processes that has been changed, you will still be able to change it if need be. So you can see the AR balance has been changed to balance the general ledger. Journal entry will need to be processed. So it will basically automatically process an amount from the one journal to the other just to balance it out, just to make sure that all is okay. We'll just click on OK, and it will proceed from there. Great. Okay, so if there's any other further questions, feel free to unmute, or if you'd like to type in chat, you can do so.
How's it? David, if we're doing a year-end process, that's here, we've got to exclude the people. Is that just a process that we then run and it clears the income statement and puts it to the retained earnings account, or is there anything much we have to do in there?
While the year-end itself won't necessarily process any income statements or things like that, you have to make sure that your data integrity is in check beforehand. So our year-end, or Palladium's year-end, will basically finish entering the history, or basically tell you that the orders will be processed in the next year, and you'll be able to then have the company be able to process in the new financial year. It doesn't process any accounts or have any transactions done. It basically opens up the next year and closes off the previous year. The data integrity is usually checked beforehand to make sure everything does balance before year end is processed.
Okay, so that's not the general ledger year end. Would that then be sitting under the general ledger?
Sorry, what do you mean by the general ledger year end?
Well, the general ledger year end is when you clear all your income statement accounts and they become your retained income for the prior year.
I see. No, that would be done via either journal entries. The year end here is just to process, so you're able to finally process in the new financial year.
Yeah, it's rolling over your year end transactions.
Yes.
And now that there'd be a month end like that every month, but would that automatically happen month end? You don't have to do anything.
Unfortunately, a lot of the companies, we do have a lot of clients that go through this, saying that they don't want anybody to process in the month beforehand. So in that case, that's why we have the transaction, or the earlier transaction date. This will be set for a month-to-month basis, but for the actual year, it will be for the complete year itself. There's no, it won't be on a month-to-month basis. We have had a few clients come to us about that, but in Palladium, it's a year-to-year basis. This is the only place where you're able to stop people from processing the previous month after you've already checked it.
Yeah, okay. Okay, that seems to be it, eh?
Yeah, that seems to be it. Great. If there is any other further questions, just feel free to send an email to support@palladium.co.za. And if you would like a recording of the video, you could send a recording to that same email address, or to the same email address that sent you the links for this recording. So, for this meeting. Okay. Great. Thank you, everybody, for joining today's training. Again, any questions, feel free just to email support@palladium.co.za. Okay.
All right, thank you very much, eh?
No problem. Thank you, everybody. Enjoy the rest of it. Same to you. Thank you. Bye.